Hey everybody, it's James from On Whose Shoulders podcast. Today we're going to talk to Herb Bloomquest and Doug Payne from two different camps in Minnesota. And we're going to talk about their insights with boards and all sorts of stuff and get into the nitty gritty of the differences between camp back in the day and camp today. I hope you enjoy. Howdy, welcome back to On Whose Shoulders. We are with Herb and Doug again from Camp Chaminade and Miracle Bible Camp, although they both recently retired from both places. I'm James, Trout Lake Camps, and I'm the director here. And I just want to get these two guys together because one of my general understandings, one of the things I like to say about camp quite a bit, is that we all do the same thing very differently. And this is a case where we've got Doug, who's spent most of his camping career at a smaller camp, and Herb, who's been at smaller camps, started at a medium camp, made that camp big. Myself started at a little bit more medium camp, and it got bigger as we went. And so just wanted to bring these guys together to talk about kind of the differences between camps, and maybe even specifically we'll talk about boards, we'll talk about interns, just kind of staffing a little bit. But and just remind me, how many years were you at Miracle?
31.
31. How many years were you at Cham?
37 at Cham.
Okay. And so back when you guys first started at these camps, what were the boards like?
Boards. What I remember is that they had been there a long time, and they didn't have much vision.
So very long-standing board members that had been there for years and years and years, which is a little bit more rare, although there are some camps out there that do have that still. But usually a lot more modern boards are termed, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But back in the day, you had the board member that, man, this is my camp. I'm the board member. I'll forever be the board member.
It was like a life sentence. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that, and it was also like, well, that's their staff position. You know, they're not on staff, but I'm on the board. And,
okay.
You know, and that was seen as a position.
It was a much more hands-on board, I think.
Yeah, depending on the size of the camp. Yeah.
Maybe some of the originators, of the property that had gotten it.
So the modern drive-in boards is that you're not in the day-to-day operations. You're in the helping us make policies or big decisions or umbrella things like that. In the early days in Christian camping, because there was so few year-round staff, there was so few full-time staff. I know, barely for me in the 80s, there was a board, and they all took up part of it. There was the board guy that did the accounting, the board guy that did the programming, the board guy that did this other stuff. So the early days of boards, not only long terms, but unpaid positions almost, because they took a ownership of a piece of camp.
Sure. And that's what was needed then. Like you said, there was maybe only one staff person. So you did need those people that were more involved in almost day-to-day stuff. The thing that I would push back against, though, is there was a strong move in the 90s to every camp needed a policy board, and not an operations board. And I'd push back on that a little bit. If you're a smaller camp, you need an electrician, a plumber, not someone that's going to come and do all of those things, but someone who at least speaks that language.
No, understands it. Yeah.
So if I hire an electrician to do something at camp, there's somebody on my board of a small camp that says, no, I understand that, and that's the right person.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, a total policy board maybe wouldn't even have that hands-on experience.
Yeah.
So so that's a transition there. So when you first got to Cham, was it a doing the details board, or were they already in that policy?
They were probably moving towards a policy, but there was still tons of hands-on thing. You needed someone who knew horses. You needed somebody who, well, like we said, was the electrician, was the carpenter. But it was beginning to move towards a policy board. So
Yep. And in Miracle, how long did that process take?
From going to a more policy.
Hands-on to policy.
Oh, it took a long time. Some of it's a structural change as you look at your bylaws and incorporation stuff, where you actually start having terms, a couple 3-year terms, and rather than just have someone there for 20, 30 years, So I think that it took, I don't remember, 10 years at least.
So being honest about terms, did terms come along because, man, I got to get that guy off the board? Or did terms come along because people needed a break and so you didn't get caught in old vision? What was the driver of going from this board member has been on forever? I mean, there's another camp I'm associated with. I haven't been there in 27 years, and there's still board members that are on that camp board that were there when I left 27 years ago. What pushed that changing of the boards?
I think it's a combination of all of those, because one of the things that you didn't mention, but I think was a real factor in it, is recruiting board members. It's really hard to recruit a board member that you're going to say, hey, would you do this for the next 25 years? As opposed to saying, look, there are 3-year terms, and you can, most typically boards are 3-year terms, and you can be up, twice. You can do 6 years if you want. But that actually helped in recruiting. It let people see that, this isn't a life sentence.
Yeah.
But for all those other reasons too, that sure, if you need fresh blood, you need new thinking. It doesn't mean you toss out the guy. Yeah.
No, I think recruiting, you hit right on the head, because if someone saw it as, I'm going to be there the next 20 years, I ain't saying yes to that.
Yeah.
Because people are a little more protective. So board members want to know, how much time is it going to take?
So how much? So was it hard to change from the one to the other, from non-terms to terms, or people went, that makes sense, that obviously that's better than otherwise?
Yeah, I think it made sense to people because a lot of them would be familiar with that from their churches.
Yep. I think by the time we made change, it was like a relief. Good. There's other people that'll step in.
Yeah.
I think it was.
And then still, in some cases, favorite board members could be off a term and then come back.
You can still be involved without being a board member.
Yeah.
You can still be consulted. You can still do your projects. I mean, you're just not, you're only a board member when you're in board session anyway.
For either of you guys, were boards the people that also were writing the checks? Because I know there's boards out there that if you are a member of that board, it is assumed that you're going to be a member of somebody who writes the check that helps the camp from time to time. Or has that been a separate thing at your camps?
That was a separate thing for me.
It was a separate thing for us, but I think it's something that is encouraged now. And, that if you're going to be involved in this place, we got to really see how you're going to be involved, not just with your expertise. I need that, but with your treasures as well.
Put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing.
But it can be time, talent, or
yes.
It can be other than just a big fat checkbook.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you could be a board member and then, hey, I'm going to expect, because you're so-and-so, you might come and help build this or come and help to build that, or you're a lawyer and so you can help us through some things.
Some heart and investment.
How did you guys choose board members?
Boy, one of the things that we worked really hard on, and I'm still, it's worth every effort that you put in. We started looking at who could be a board member 5 years from now, and started watching that person and grooming that person, seeing what they're involved in, keeping track of what our needs were. If we needed a legal mind on the board, or if we needed a theological mind, someone to kind of keep us on track there. And then what I would do is probably 2 years before they came onto a board, I would talk with them about being a board member and what's involved in that. And then a year before they came on the board, they started getting all the same information board members did, so that when they came on the board, they were already brought up to speed.
So no voting system at SHAM? You would kind of choose them and they'd come on?
It was a voting system, and yes, they got elected at annual meetings, and yes, all board members were encouraged to help us find new board members. But let's face it, you as the director, you've got a much broader pool. You know how these people are involved in a parent-child retreat or summer camp or a church group that's coming. You just got a bigger feel for, who's out there and who might be interested.
Similar at Miracle?
So on paper, it's like a self-perpetuating board.
Yes.
But the reality is, and this is where I think we're probably sharing inside information, you as the director have lots of influence, and you are making suggestions to your board member. This person's at your church, or this person's been involved. They could be somebody that you could be grooming to replace you. I'd like to say I had a 5-year plan and a 2-year plan and all that other good stuff.
We did.
But it wasn't always that planned. But the concept of constantly thinking about who's future board members, I do concur with that.
Yeah.
I just wasn't as organized as her.
How many people on your board?
It ranges from 5 to 10.
How many have done yours?
Ours, our bylaws say a minimum of 9.
Okay.
Could be more.
So are you looking for balance of, hey, I want 2 businessmen, 2 youth pastors, and a nurse and a lawyer? Or what kind of drives that process? Staff?
A little bit, but more to the point of in an operation board, I need those different skill sets. Mm-hmm. In a policy board, I'm still looking for different stakeholders. Okay, who understands youth? Who understands young families? Who understands scripture well? Who understands business well? And one of the things that you then need to teach those people is that when you're on the board, you don't advocate for, I'm a youth pastor, I'm advocating for the youth, and every decision we're going to make, I'm going to push for how it's best for youth. You inform. You don't advocate. And there might be times as a children's pastor that you might vote for a decision that really doesn't necessarily help children, but it helps camp, the larger camp picture, which in turn will make a healthy camp for the kids that I'm sending.
The big picture, versus just their niche.
Yep.
Is there any difference between boards in a bigger camp and a smaller camp?
I think there's a significant difference just in the pool of people you're looking at. I mean, so we were a non-denominational camp, and maybe 10 churches. There's a smaller pool of people to recruit from, and so I think maybe I'm.
Well, but you also had a smaller board.
Yes.
But
one thing when you were talking about 5 years in advance and 2 years in advance and all that planning that it would have been good if I did more of.
Yep.
Pray a lot.
Yeah.
They pray a lot because you're wanting God to surface the right people in your board. Because as the board goes, the camp goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to circle back to a question on that one. Let me go back to denominational versus non-denominational boards. Is there a difference between so Trout for a second. Trout has a denominational board that is over the entire denomination. So the president of our denominational region is the board that we report to, but our quote unquote board is really that denominational president. The guy who makes the report to the board is the guy that we actually treat kind of like our board. And so it's a little bit different system. When I first came to Trout years ago, there was a camping board that was a separate on the sideboard, but they didn't have a lot of decision-making power, which kind of undermined why you would be on the board, because any decision they made, we had to take the other board and say, hey, what do you think on that? And eventually it was just hard to keep people on that board. And so Trout's, I think, unique in that we're not board driven as much as probably your camps are. But let me go back to your other question there. Is there a ministry to the board members via the camp, or is the board members ministering to the camp? What direction is that heading in?
Why can't it be both?
Okay, so what does that look like?
I get to know the board members personally. You're sharing life together. And we all have the heart for the camp ministry. So it's like, your board members personally. I mean, and you enjoy their company most of the time.
Yeah.
And they know about you and they know how to pray for you in different ways than most everybody else, because I mean they're getting every piece of information about how things are going at camp.
Mm-hmm. We had a program director years ago. Her name was Lorna. She was phenomenal. One of the things that she taught us was we need to look at our summer staff as a group that we are ministering to, just like we are any other campers. And then we took that a step further and said, you know what, we need to look at our board that way too. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like? Well, there are trainings that I will make sure that the board is able to get, both just that are germane to camping, but also just personal things. Mm-hmm. There will be books and articles that I'll feed them and ask them to read, because I just think it'll help them in life.
Mm-hmm. I always made sure that they were getting the CCCI magazine Insight, invited to the sectional
nationals, things like that.
Invited to the national too, but I don't think I ever had anybody go. Mm-hmm. And books. One of the things I picked up, I think it was on the national, take 15 minutes at the board meeting, read a book together, and whether it be about the current trends that Barna is coming up with or how to be a board member. Yeah. It was an educational piece. I don't want to waste the board members' time.
So you start in the beginning days of these people that have been on the boards forever and really invested, whether time or lifespan or whatever, to these people that are doing rotational board times. So you're finding in the modern version, you're maybe spending a little bit more time training of what camp is, what camp needs from you. Is that done by bringing in outside people to talk, or is that your one-on-ones with those guys? How does that training a board member and understanding what being on the board, what does that look like?
Well, again, it's a yes. It's all of that. Mm-hmm. Yes, there were books I would ask them to read even before they became board members. Mm-hmm. I want them to understand camp. So at least once a year, a long all-day board meeting will be at camp, where it's not just being there, but we will do camp. Mm-hmm. And then we tried to do that about 15 minutes in every board meeting. We tried to do some sort of training about camp. Mm-hmm. Hey, here's an activity that we have kids do. You ought to experience this. Mm-hmm. And or training on bringing somebody in. I always had a ton of my staff involved in board meetings.
That's unusual, I think.
Yeah, it might be, but I wanted the board to know these people and to see their incredible talent, and then you can pray for them again.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't invite the whole staff to the board meeting typically. They might come in and make a quick report, but not very often.
So when being careful, what is if there's a possible board member watching us right now, don't do blank as a board member.
You mentioned it, Doug, already. When is a board? So run with that. Tell us about that.
Technically, you have the power of the board when you're a board member in board session.
Yep.
Any other time you're a volunteer.
Okay, so only when you're sitting in the board meeting around the table do you have the ability to say, I'm a board member, therefore this.
You're going to paint the building this way.
Yep. But when you are not around the table in a board meeting, you are a civilian walking around the facility.
Absolutely.
That's a huge learning curve for some board members.
Yeah. I being somebody who was once pulled aside by a board member and chastised for something, I like that. I like that model.
No, it might be a good idea. They can pull you aside. This is an idea I have, and I think a good director will listen and say, "Thanks. That's a good point," especially if they're right.
Yeah.
But a big decision should happen in the board meeting.
Well, and a board member shouldn't be coming to camp and talking to the other staff and, the non-director staff, telling them how they ought to do it.
Oh, so no going around the back.
Yeah, and every camp is going to be a little bit different, but I think most camps, the only employee the board has is the director. Mm. They can't go around, and if they don't like the head cook and they want to fire the head cook, but I'm fighting to keep him or her, they need to get rid of me.
Yeah.
No, that's very true. I mean, they hire the director to make it happen.
Yeah.
or the executive director, whatever title.
Out.
And then, if it's not happening that's who they also write up and do the review on.
I was involved in a camp that had a board members that had relationships with underling staff that actually got rid of 2 directors because of a way that the underling staff would go around to the back side of the board. It was a really toxic
Not very healthy.
kind of a thing, not very healthy, where those board members should have said, hey, I know we're friends, but we're not talking about that here.
Right.
And there's a correct way to go about this. In one of the wonderful God moments in my life was when I was able to tell a friend of mine who became the director there, hey, this is something that's going to happen. And he was like, oh, no, that's never going to happen. That won't happen. And then he called me about 6 months later and said, it's happening. I said, you need to go to the board and explain you can't do that and have underlings going to the board members every time there's something new that they don't like, because by design of the way the world works, every leader is going to bring a different concept than what a underling, a staff member's concept is. And when they feel like they have access to that board, and they'll get
it undermines the director.
Yeah. It makes it really hard for somebody of vision or somebody of trying to, hey, we want to go from here to here. It makes it really, really difficult on them.
You mentioned vision. They have to know that they're headed the same direction. The director and the board need to know they're headed the same direction. Always be in communication about vision.
And communication is the huge thing. I, as the director, need to over communicate to my board so that nothing catches them off guard. And so they know, this is the direction that we're going. Then they hear something backdoor and they can go, no, I understand. I understand where we're headed.
And they're great for letting you know what's going on in your, supporting churches or in the community. They should let you know, oh, I heard this, or, a camper came home and said this happened, and then a mother called me, and it's like, just call and let's figure out what really happened.
Is there a little bit of paranoia in these systems, or a little bit of waking up in the middle of the night, the board?
It depends on what sort of a relationship you have with your board.
Yeah.
And if you've been there long enough to where you've interacted with them and they understand you, then it's a group of friends.
Maybe at the beginning it's more you're tentative, but boy, the longer you're there, the nicer it gets.
Well,
you get on the same page naturally.
You get on the same page, and one of the things that you as a director have got to understand that my one brain probably is not as good as those other 5 or 9 or 10 brains. So I do need to listen to them.
Big time. There's times we said that big speech about, it's like you're a board member when you're in board session. Well, there are lots of other times I included and sent more information.
Yes.
I need your input on this. Or like, what about this? I want us all.
Because it helps you not to be standing alone with that thing.
Exactly.
And you've got a board standing behind you. Yeah.
We did this together because it's like, I don't know for sure.
We made this dumb decision together.
Yeah.
We did it together.
And there's times you want to quickly get information to them. So, this is going down, and, that way you're not blindsided.
That the board speaks with one voice.
Oh, that's huge.
That afterwards I can't say, well, this is what the board decided. I think we should have. No.
Oh, so you
can't do that.
So in that 5 to 6 vote, the sixth side it has to be the equal on the topic as the 5 that got outvoted and went the other way. But when you walk out of the room, you all agree.
Yep. This is what we decided.
But that's got to be incredibly difficult in the world today.
You'd love everything to go as a consensus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, in my time as executive director, we had 2 votes that were not unanimous.
Yeah.
But part of it is because we talked a lot, and sometimes we said, we're not of one mind on this, so let's stop and wait.
We'll back it off.
But just yes boards are bad too, right?
Oh, yeah, but this wasn't a yes. I've seen it both where this one person said, I'm not so sure about this. And we said, you know what, let's stop, let's pray, let's table this for a while. And eventually we all swung over to that person's view.
Yeah.
And I've seen it the other way where this one person after a bit said, I got to trust your brains.
Yeah. But it's just interesting. I mean, many of the things, like if you're making a big decision and your wife says, I'm just not comfortable with this.
Yeah.
Okay, I really want to do it, but
Yeah.
Okay.
but I'll wait.
Yeah.
But to be together, this is the board decision, rather than walk out and say, well, I didn't vote for that. Now, think about that on a search committee at a church. When they come out, the pastor usually wants to know, what was the vote? Is it a 60-40 vote? It means I got 40% that don't want me here?
Yeah.
That ain't good.
Huh. It's interesting.
So
in that, okay, in the beginning, doing lots of things around Camp 2 you can only be on 4 years or whatever. You specialized a little bit in what we're bringing them. What's the future of a board look like? I mean, how do boards look different going forward than they did in your guys' time?
Well, I don't know that they look different, because I think we had it pretty good.
So we've dialed that in pretty well.
I think so.
I can't think of any huge changes except keeping everybody in the communication. Many of the things, at least that we're talking about, doesn't mean I always got it done like we're talking about. So it's
We're talking about the bright side.
This is how it's supposed to be. And then it's like, oh yeah, I didn't get that communication out every month like I was supposed to. I'm supposed to, or I didn't get the minutes out quick enough. It's like, or I didn't have a 5-year plan to vet and get them ready in 2 years, and my board policy manual still constantly needs work. So it's like there's still things to do.
If somebody wants a resource, I really like about 95% of all the Carver board method stuff. I think that's been really helpful. Those guys know what they're doing. So I'd recommend that as a good resource to folks.
Well, there's a lot of information about nonprofit boards that doesn't come from Christian camping.
Yes.
That's what that point really is. Doing good, better. I don't know who wrote it, but this book.
Maybe the thing that about board members that, again, I'm always kind of a little surprised by in my interactions, which hasn't been a ton, but I think sometimes board members think they're signing up for a Xanadu 4 years, 3 years, and then something goes wrong, or there's a hard decision, or there's a difficult decision, or at the end of the day, it's a 6-5 vote. How do you get those boards through those hard moments in your time?
Well, I think that's true just in camping. The whole persona of camping is that it's relaxing out by the lake, everybody's kumbaya around the campfire. Expectations of board members, are sometimes like staff. It's like, it's work to make an environment and a community, and there's people involved, and it's messy at times. And so you got to be realistic about expectations. Just because you're in God's family doesn't mean that there aren't issues to deal with. We should know that.
One of the things, that I mentioned, a year before somebody came on a board, I started giving them all the information that a board member would get. And I think that helps with that, because then they can see going into it that, oh, wait a minute, that was a problem, or that was
fairy
an issue.
tales and sunshine.
Yeah.
It just to be realistic that, it's people. If you've been, and I think sometimes just because you've been on the town board or the library board or something like that does not necessarily mean you're really the right material to be on a ministry board.
One of the forget who it was. Maybe it's the Carver folks. 86% of the people that have been on a board, spiritual or secular, 86% view it as a negative experience.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wes Willis, who was president of Northwestern College for a while, he said that, I love his quote, he said, boards are the worst way to accomplish anything except for all the other options. And the point was, one of the things that I did with board members is, again, as I'm recruiting them before I bring them on, I tell them why I want them on the board. Here's the skill set that I think you will bring that we will benefit from. And here's how I think being on the board will benefit you. So that then we can highlight those things and we can do the training, not just use them up, but build into them as well. Because I don't want 86% of my board members thinking this was a bad experience.
Yeah, I wish I had never done that.
Yeah.
Well, and also how often you meet too. And, We only met when things were going fine, no special meetings, 4 times a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A couple hours.
Well, in
Now,
Chaminade,
a couple hours, they'll say, Doug, no. It's
Yeah.
like, you were doing good to get it in 3, but
Yeah.
we tried.
well, Chaminade, we met 5 times a year.
Okay. That's not bad. And I've never had this thought before, but in historical Christian camping, are board members undercredited for where camps got from here to here?
Oh, I think so.
Are they the behind the scenes, the lost? Hey man, Chaminade made it from here to here. Miracle bought a new property and started over and made it from here to here. But the board isn't really patted on the back for that at any point, is it?
Especially in some of the original, look at
Yep.
the 1900 to 1950. Those board members were making it happen off their own resources, their own time,
Yeah.
their own talent.
Before on-site directors.
Yeah.
Before.
There wasn't any staff. They were making it happen.
Wow. I guess I never considered that was the method that drove so much. And now you get your hand slapped if you're a board that's doing day-to-day stuff. But without that early days of board members doing day-to-day, nothing would have gotten done.
Well, that's what I think you mentioned earlier, Herb, that it's like that, that needed to be that way for that time.
Huh.
It needed to be a board member that had the plumbing and electrical and building skills because they just bought a bare piece of property
Yeah.
and figure out how to make it happen. The director that started Miracle Bible Camp was an electrician
Yeah.
and a
that's
pastor.
true.
And, it's like,
Yep.
just like church planters. I mean, they're doing a lot of things like Paul, supporting themselves.
Yeah. So in the modern today's boards, what makes the best board members?
That depends on the camp's needs, I think, too.
Well, I think it's understanding as a board member, I understand the purpose of camp. Purpose of camp is that I want to win kids to Jesus.
Yeah.
I want to tell kids about Jesus, which means, like we mentioned before, stuff is going to get broken. But man, I just brought up a work crew to fix all of that stuff, and now these kids broke it again. Yeah, but 3 of them, trusted Jesus. So let's bust up everything. That's fine.
So what makes a good board member in today's world? They have to be willing to support the director and have the director's back. They really need to be learners because the culture when we started, there wasn't an email address to get a hold of camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't call me on my cell phone.
Yeah.
This is 30 years.
Yeah.
We weren't doing ministry safe and background checks on everybody on the property. I mean, it's like there's a lot of change. You have to be studying the culture. Now, the gospel's still the gospel. God's creation is still getting everybody's attention.
Yeah.
The staff is still building relationships.
Yeah.
But you got to know some of the other cultural needs. Trust. My goodness, families don't trust you the same as they did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Families aren't as intact.
Huh.
Kids are fussier with what they eat. I mean, special diets and all that stuff. Think of the changes.
Love it. So that is Herb and Doug and I talking about boards. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.